Caring Review, print speaking to the blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times podcast, recorded in the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @QNReview. That is @CUENDREVIEW. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cuenreview.com. That is INFORMATION@CUENDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 16th of June 2023. From the news section, emergency teams in Glasgow after fire hydrants targeted by vandals. By Ava White. Emergency teams are in Drumchapel this morning after fire hydrants were targeted by vandals. Scottish Water said it was investigating a loss of water supply in the G15 area following reports of fire hydrant vandalism. Crews confirmed repair work has been completed and that the supply should be returning to normal. However, incidents like this have prompted a stern warning to the public. People are being warned of the dangers of vandalising fire hydrants, including widespread disruption and putting lives at risk. It comes after around 40 incidents of vandalism across Scotland in the past month. In one case, a child was injured after setting off a fire hydrant due to the force of the water pressure coming out of it. Incidents can result in water supplies for firefighters being impacted and can affect their ability to tackle fires, posing a risk to lives and property damage. People are being urged not to set off fire hydrants, and anyone who witnesses this type of vandalism is asked to report it to Police Scotland immediately. Kes Justovaik, Scottish Water's General Manager of Customer Water Services, said, "Some people who vandalise fire hydrants may see it as harmless fun, but that's not the case. The reality is that as they play in the water, homes and businesses are suffering low water pressure or a loss of supply. Also, firefighters rely on these hydrants for fighting fires, and a shortage of water could endanger people's lives and property. Fire hydrant vandalism is completely reckless and selfish, and communities need to help us put a stop to this behaviour before the unthinkable occurs. We're urging people to help us tackle the problem by reporting any incidents to the police immediately." Gordon Pride, Area Commander to Head of Prevention and Protection at the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, added, "Tampering with or vandalising a fire hydrant is a criminal offence and could put lives at risk. It is vital that our firefighters have access to operational hydrants to ensure fires are safely extinguished, ultimately protecting lives as well as people's homes and businesses. Anyone who interferes with or vandalises a fire hydrant is also placing themselves at risk due to the potential release of high water pressure. It can also impact local water supplies. We take this matter very seriously and ask that parents and carers warn children about the dangers of hydrant vandalism to both themselves and their wider community. Anyone who witnessed fire hydrant vandalism is urged to contact police on 101. Alternatively, information can be passed on anonymously by contacting Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111. That's 0800 555 111. And that report was by Ava White. From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 16th of June 2023, news. Glasgow murder trial of 14-year-old Justin McLaughlin begins. And this article is by Grant McCabe. A teenager stabbed to death a schoolboy at a railway station, a court heard. Daniel Haig, 18, went on trial on Friday accused of murdering Justin McLaughlin, 14, on October the 16th, 2021. It is said he pursued Justin at Glasgow's High Street railway station and brandished a knife before striking the boy with it. Haig denies murder. The case began when Advocate Depute Stephen Borthwick KC, reading to jurors a joint minute of facts agreed between prosecutors and Haig's legal team, led by Defence KC John Scullion. Mr. Borthwick stated Haig struck a single blow to Justin's body with a knife, resulting in the teenager suffering a fatal injury. The jury was also told of attempts by mercy crews to try and save Justin at the station before he was transferred to the city's Royal Hospital for Children. The boy did not recover and was pronounced dead that evening. A post-mortem later concluded that Justin passed away as a result to a stab wound to the heart. He had a superficial wound to the tip of his finger, which could potentially have been a defensive style injury. The court went on to hear a police interview with a 17-year-old boy who met Haig that day. They had agreed to meet to swap jogging bottoms and ended up at a high street station that afternoon. The boy knew Haig, but they were not close. The witness was planning on getting a train to meet a friend. It was there Haig then stated to them, "All of them are running at us." The 17-year-old recalled a group coming downstairs and he panicked. He said Haig went into the bag he had with him. The witness told police, "I tried my best. I said, do not do anything stupid." He claimed Haig ran at them as the 17-year-old tried to stop him. Justin was said to be part of the group, and he and Haig ended up fighting and scuffling. He tried to break it up but stated Haig was bigger and stronger than him. The boy said Haig, at one stage, went onto the train to try to retrieve a knife that he had apparently dropped. He told detectives, "I was shouting and screaming at him, 'Do not do anything stupid.'" Haig was said to have ran back, and the witness recalled one of the group eventually falling, but did not realise it was Justin until he later learned on social media. The 17-year-old remembered hyperventilating that day, adding, "I could not really breathe properly." He went to a friend's house in the east end of the city and sat on the stairs crying for hours and hours. The trial, before Judge Lord Clark, continues. And that report was by Grant McCabe. From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 16th of June 2023, from the news section, Glasgow vigilante group pretended to be 13 to snare pervert. Report by Connor Gordon. A pervert sent a naked picture of himself to a girl he believed was 13 years old. Thomas McGee, 40, was instead talking to an adult decoy posing as a teenager. Glasgow Sheriff Court heard that a member of a vigilante group created a decoy called Sophie. The pair communicated between October the 3rd and October the 28th, 2021. Prosecutor Emma Barker told the court that a total of 2,500 text exchanges were done. She said, McGee told the decoy that she was underage and that she would get in trouble. McGee sent sexually explicit messages which included him posing naked in a mirror. He also sent pictures of male and female genitalia, as well as a man wearing a bra. McGee told the decoy that he would do sexual things to her. The decoy passed McGee's information to another vigilante group who confronted him at his home. The police were also called meantime and they arrested McGee. He pleaded guilty on Friday to sending written sexual communications to an adult pretending to be a child. Butler also admitted sending an image to an adult pretending to be a child, thereby attempting to causing a child to view a sexual image. Sentence was deferred pending background reports by Sheriff Shona Gilroy. McGee, of the city's Sandy Hills, had his bail continued and was put on the sex offenders register. And that report was by Connor Gordon. From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 16th of June 2023, from the news section, Major rose to close for makeover of Kirkintilloch. Report by Emma McGregor. The heart of Kirkintilloch is set for a makeover. The East Northamptonshire town revamp of Regent Gardens aims to create new opportunities. As part of community-inspired improvements for the town, the project to redevelop Regent Gardens is a partnership between the Community Council, Your Kirky and East Northamptonshire Council. Construction is due to begin on July the 10th and will last approximately 6 months. Union Street will be closed off to traffic and there will be no access to the gardens. In 2019, consultation was carried out by Your Kirky, where they received strong support from locals for the redevelopment of the area, and again in 2021. Feedback indicated that many felt that the gardens lacked flexibility and had accessibility issues. Responding to feedback and following discussions, both the Council and Community Council project aims to enshrine the area known as the heart of the town by creating a more user-friendly space. The redesign will also create improved links between the gardens, the town hall and Peel Park, with hopes of attracting more people to all three areas in the town. Councillor Gordon Lowe, leader of Eastern Bartonshire Council, said, "The aim of the project is to revive and enhance a key civic space within Kirkintilloch, responding to feedback from the community. I'm pleased the council has been able to partner with your Kirkie to pave the way for these improvements, which will make the area more accessible and provide the ideal location for a wide range of events and activities." Nigel Rook from your Kirkie is delighted that the work is about to begin. He said, "The pandemic delayed plans, but in the meantime, your Kirkie worked with the council to develop and progress the project, reinforced by further consultation. We look forward to welcoming people to the new look space, which we hope can reach its full potential as the heart of Kirkintilloch. In the meantime, the town centre remains very much open for business." And that report was by Emma McGregor. From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 16th of June 2023, from the news section, SNP deputy leader accused of sparking Twitter abuse towards charity. Report by Stuart Patterson. The SNP's deputy leader has been accused of sparking online abuse towards a charity following claims in the Scottish Parliament. Keith Brown had called out Conservative leader Douglas Ross in Holyrood, accusing him of trying to discredit Glasgow's low emission zone. Brown told Holyrood that Ross had pursued a misleading line of questioning on the LEZ when he said the scheme was preventing a homelessness charity from doing its work. Ross had previously raised Homeless Project Scotland's issue, stating it was forced to take vans off the road as they did not meet the emission standards. Brown said the Tory leader tried to discredit the new low emission zone in Glasgow. The SNP MSP added, he, Ross, went on to heavily imply that the LEZ was condemning the charity to being unable to do the work that it wants to do. Of course, he failed to clarify that Glasgow City Council had, in fact, given an exemption to the Homeless Project Scotland so that it could continue its work. But the charity has reacted, stating Brown's statement was inaccurate. It has taken issue with the MSP's comments and has written to the presiding officer, Alison Johnson, asking for Mr Brown to apologise. In the letter, Colin McKinnon, chair of the charity, said Brown grossly misrepresented our organisation. He added, specifically, he stated that Glasgow City Council had granted us dispensation and had not prevented us from carrying out our work due to the implementation of the low emission zone regulations. Mr McKinnon said the statement is entirely inaccurate. Homeless Project Scotland said they were allowed an exemption for one van and had to take 3 others off the road. Colin McKinnon, the charity's chair, said the statement led to Twitter abuse and public attacks on Facebook. It has called on Mr Brown to publicly apologise for his misrepresentation of Homeless Project Scotland in the Scottish Parliament. Brown had asked the presiding officer, I ask whether you would grant Douglas Ross a personal statement if he asked you for one to allow him to create the record and to explain why he pursued a misleading line of questioning in last week's session at First Minister's Questions. The SNP and Mr Brown's office had been contacted for comment. And that report was by Stuart Patterson. From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 16th of June 2023, from the news section, UK dog owners warned about the threat of heat causing paw bleeds. And this report is by Matthew Evans. The UK has been treated to glorious sunshine over the past few weeks, sunshine that we really aren't conditioned to deal with. Our walls are well insulated and are designed to keep heat in, which means when summer comes around each year, we Brits sweat like pigs at the first sign of heat. However, the same can be said for our dogs, but the dangers are tenfold. A dog is extremely prone to heat when they walk on the pavement or floor. This can sometimes cause bleeding. If it is too hot for you to walk outside barefoot, it's too hot for your dogs too. Always feel the pavement with the bottom of your bare hand before letting your dog walk on it. If you cannot comfortably hold your palm to the pavement for 10 seconds or more, it is too hot for your dog's paws. Unfortunately, pets can and do suffer burns on their paw pads from walking on surfaces that are too hot. Burned paw pads may look swollen, red or blistered. Burns to the paws are a serious medical issue and require prompt attention from a veterinarian. Pets' paw pads are supposed to be somewhat rough, so they can get traction in smooth surfaces. However, a variety of factors, including hot pavement, wintry conditions, chemicals, dry air, exposure to rough surfaces, and excessive licking can cause dry, cracked paw pads. Dry and cracked pads can be painful and put your pet at risk of infection. When this happens, a loose flap develops which may be detached from the paw pad. This leaves a red inflamed patch that bleeds upon being subjected to further pressure. It is generally safe to walk dogs in temperatures of up to 19 degrees Celsius, 68 degrees Fahrenheit, but be careful when the mercury rises above this. Even at temperatures as low as 20 degrees Celsius, 70 degrees Fahrenheit, dogs are at risk of heat stroke. Heat strokes in dogs is essentially a high temperature not caused by a fever. And that report was by Matthew Evans.
Evening Times, June 15. Lifestyle. It is emotional. Glasgow musical theatre guru to retire. Report by Anne Fotheringham. The dancers warm up with a series of impressive superhuman-style stretches, while the sound of voice exercises being practiced over and over filters into the corridor. Actors, clutching scripts, walk with purpose past rows of colourful costumes and tables of props. There is a sense of building excitement in the rehearsal rooms on Norfolk Street as the Dance School of Scotland's musical theatre students prepare for their summer show, Encore, which takes place on Friday at Glasgow Royal Concert Hall. For Graham Dickey, however, it is a bittersweet moment. The man who founded the course, which is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, is retiring, and he admits it is with mixed emotions that he is overseeing the final bunch of rehearsals. It will be hard to go, no doubt about that, because musical theatre was my baby, he agrees. But I have grandchildren now, a 2-year-old and one just born 3 weeks ago, and I don't want to miss anything. They are down in London, and I want more freedom to go up and down to see them. And I want to go back to my roots, I suppose. I want to get back to singing, maybe MDing. That's where I started out. This is a full-on job, so it takes a lot of time. And I'm old, he laughs. Graham, who is originally from Aberdeen and now lives in Scotstoun with his wife, the actor Julie Rose Smith, studied piano, singing and conducting at the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama in Glasgow, now the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland. He was appointed the youngest professional musical director, MD, in Britain when he joined the Independent Opera in London. In 1981 he returned to Scotland, and after spells with Scottish Ballet, the RSAMD, Scottish Opera and Glasgow Grand Opera, he joined the Dance School of Scotland, a national centre of excellence based in Knightswood Secondary, which is also celebrating an anniversary, its 40th, in 2023. There, in 1998, he started the National Musical Theatre course. I felt the school was missing a huge opportunity by not having it, he says simply. They let me do it, so I started with 8 dancers who were in their 6th year, and we put on Blood Brothers. It was nothing special. We had nae money, but it went down really well. And here we are 25 years later. Hundreds of talented young musical theatre stars have learned their trade on the course, going on to appear in stage productions around the country. Many more work as choreographers, directors, teachers, and creatives in the world's top companies and schools. Graham keeps in touch with most of them, whether it's a daft text every so often from River City and Panto star Darren Brownlee, or bumping into Blackpool's hot ice choreographer Lindsay Brown at a party, or just catching up on the careers of the likes of Blythe Jandu at King's Panto, Gail Rankin, Glow on Netflix, and Susie McAdam, The Rock Horror Show, when he can. This is going to sound very corny, but it really is like a big family, he says, grinning. It's great so many talented young people are going on to do such a range of things. I hope that continues. People need to understand that this course, like the dance school itself, is a national resource. Whatever happens after I leave, that knowledge of the industry, what this course is providing for drama schools, its specificity, all of that has to be there. Otherwise, we are doing musical theatre students a disservice, in my opinion. The preparations for Encore, which will also feature still game star Jane McCarry, is taking place inside the Citizens Theatre's rehearsal spaces, part of a collaboration which goes back to the early days of the course, says Graham. This I will really miss, he says, smiling. The Cits took a gamble on me when I approached them 22 years ago to ask if we could do this, and the team here are absolutely fantastic. It is so good for the students to work with professional stage crews, learning from professional lighting and sound technicians. It is an amazing opportunity. His advice to his successor is simple. Enjoy it, work hard, and keep abreast of what's happening in the industry, he says. I know the shows are going to be emotional. I know come October I will find it strange not be welcoming the new students in. But he adds with a smile, but it's time to move on, and it's exciting for me and for the school, and I look forward to seeing what they do next. When I started teaching, friends asked if I missed doing, but I don't. Watching 25 people do what I love, and being able to give them notes to help them do it even better, that is the best feeling in the world. Report by Anne Fotheringham. Evening Times, June 16. The story behind Glasgow's New Orleans-inspired soul food restaurant. Lifestyle. Report by Sarah Campbell. Matthew Major had mentioned that his new Glasgow restaurant was small, and yet it's not until our visit to Nola Soul in the city's south side that we realise just how cosy the space truly is. The 28-year-old stands shoulder to shoulder with Ryan Wood and Kieran Mullen, his fellow chefs and business partners, who appear to move perfectly in sync, second-guessing each other's every micro-movement as a colourful assortment of dishes from their soul food-inspired menu begins to line the pass. We all bounce off each other really well, Matthew says. If someone is lacking a little one day, then another of us will always pick up the slack. Aside from that, we're all completely obsessed with food. We'll work all day, go home, and then start sending each other new ideas that we've been looking at. I had worked with Ryan before, and he had worked with Kieran, so we knew that we shared that similar mindset. After lockdown, we seriously started to consider opening our own place, which would give us the chance to get creative. When the opportunity to take over this unit came up, we jumped at it, and decided we would give it everything we had. Many will recognise the Victoria Road address as the former home of Nanika, a noodle and bail bun bar which closed earlier this year. Nola Soul, shortened from New Orleans, Louisiana Soul, now adds a taste of the Deep South to a street which already offers a culinary world tour from Japanese karaage at Daku to New York-style pizza at Errol's. Matthew continues, "We were so ready for opening weekend. Seeing the first people enjoying our food was just absolute euphoria. There was such a buzz about the place, and we were so happy to be joining a vibrant community which has such a dynamic food scene. Our customers, but also neighbours like Big Counter, have been so fantastic and so supportive of everything we are doing. And who would not be supportive of a team that's bringing a gut-busting menu of gravy-topped fried chicken burgers, tangy barbecue wings, or shrimp and grits to the neighbourhood? There's gumbo too, with either a hearty combination of sausage and chicken, or a vegan-friendly cauliflower alternative that's begging to be followed by a pillowy soft beignet for dessert. As beads of condensation begin to drip down a pint of home-brewed iced tea, Matthew tells us the goal is to put their own spin on soul food staples as they adapt recipes to suit Scottish seasonality and produce. He said, "We make everything from scratch at Nola Soul, including our buns and pickles. We've got experience in fine dining, so what we're trying to offer is comfort food that's of a really high quality. Not all of the traditional ingredients can be sourced here, but we do try to keep it as authentic as we can. We've swapped collard greens for kale, for example, and don't serve crawfish because it's an invasive species that's not found in Glasgow. We strongly believe in serving tasty food that's affordable, and will always be thinking about how to develop our recipes." Almost 3 weeks in, the young chefs have left any hint of opening day nerves behind them, and now operate with quiet confidence as they prepare for another weekend service in the hazy summer heat. Getting ready to carry out both front of house and chef duties, Matthew said, "We're all in our 20s and definitely had a lot of people who shook their heads or asked us if we knew what we were getting into throughout the process. But having spent so long working in other people's kitchens, we all know exactly what we want and have realized how liberating it is to be able to make our own decisions as a team. One of the guests the other day asked if we were family, and it definitely feels that way. When you're working somewhere as busy as this, it's almost closer than that, and not just because of the lack of space. We're all really happy to see people are enjoying it so far." Nola Soul is located at 72 Victoria Road. Report by Sarah Campbell. Evening Times, June 16. Opinion: Labour used council cash to fight women over equal pay, says David Linden. Tempted though I am to write this week about the latest shenanigans of the unkempt man-child that is Boris Johnson, I will resist. To be frank, he is yesterday's man who has no answers to the challenges we as Glaswegians face today. With any luck, he'll have left the political stage for good, and we can now get on with focusing on the big issues and the injustices which are so pervasive in society. Equal pay for women has been one such long-standing issue, with many women across the world facing pay discrimination and unequal treatment in the workplace. It is a fundamental issue that needs to be addressed to ensure a fair and just society and to truly promote gender equality. The recent efforts of SNP-led Glasgow City Council to end the equal pay scandal and compensate all those affected have been a significant step towards achieving this goal. For years, women in Glasgow City Council were paid less than their male counterparts for doing the same job. This was a systemic issue that impacted thousands of women who were systematically undervalued, underpaid, and discriminated against by a Labour council. However, this injustice could not continue forever, and it took the election of an SNP council, led by Councillor Susan Aiken, to step up and take the necessary steps to rectify this issue. In October 2018, Glasgow City Council formally apologised for its use of discriminatory pay practices, which had denied women equal pay for far too long. The Council acknowledged the harm that had been caused to women as a result of this discrimination and pledged to take action to right this wrong. But words alone, however important, would not be enough. The Council quite literally had to put its money where its mouth was. Since then, my SNP colleagues at Glasgow City Council have worked tirelessly to address the issue and have made significant progress in ensuring that all women are paid equally for their work. This did not come without a cost. In October 2019, the Council announced that it had agreed to pay an eye-watering £548 million in compensation to thousands of its former and current female employees who had been discriminated against on the basis of their gender. This was a monumental moment in the fight for equal pay for women, not just in Glasgow, but across the world. It was a clear signal that pay discrimination and gender inequality will not be tolerated, and that efforts must be made to address these issues head-on. As the Council announced this week that it had agreed the final and last round of compensation, it is important to celebrate that, but also face the blunt reality that this has had a devastating impact on Council finances. In short, cleaning up the mess left by Glasgow Labour has meant we have less resources for our roads, parks and schools, as we have had to quite literally pay the price of Labour incompetence. On top of the millions of pounds the Council already pays in eye-watering interest charges on Labour's private finance initiative agreements every year, this is simply unforgivable. But I still believe it was the right thing to do, because the importance of equal pay for women cannot be overstated. According to the World Economic Forum, it will take another 257 years to close the global gender pay gap at the current rate of progress. This is unacceptable, and urgent action is needed to address this issue. Unequal pay comes at a cost. When women are paid less than men for doing the same job, it not only denies them the financial security they deserve, but also undermines their sense of self-worth and dignity. This is particularly true for those who work in low-paid, female-dominated industries, such as care work and cleaning, where the gender pay gap can be as high as 30%. Furthermore, unequal pay for women has a knock-on effect on families and the wider economy. When women are paid less, they have less money to spend, which impacts consumer spending, reduces tax revenues, and slows economic growth. This is why addressing the gender pay gap is not just a matter of fairness, but it is also essential for the health and well-being of society as a whole. Glasgow City Council's efforts to finally end the equal pay scandal and compensate all those affected has been a significant step towards promoting gender equality and addressing the gender pay gap in our city. I am only sorry that it took so long and so much pain for the women of our city to get the justice they deserved. But when the next election comes round, don't forget that the Labour Party in Glasgow used council cash to fight these women in court. Thankfully, the SNP-led council has now ensured the money is finally where it belongs, in the bank accounts of hard-working Glaswegian women, says David Linden. Evening Times, June 15. Opinion. Glasgow and her citizens are suffering for these vanity projects, says George Redmond, Labour Party councillor in the Calton ward. A week's a long time in politics, so they say. Just a bit. Between Donald Trump's charade over the pond, the pantomime villain of Boris Johnson resigning from Westminster, and Nicola Sturgeon finding herself getting a lift to the cop shop on Sunday after her arrest, we have barely had a chance to take a breath, let alone enjoy the sunshine. And as much as the news streams are filled with this, and some commentators find it all highly entertaining, I think even thick of it writer Armando Iannucci would have struggled to come up with this sort of ridiculous politic scenario. It's our county, our city, and our communities that are suffering. You see, while the headlines are filled with talks of how Sturgeon was released after questioning what she was wearing, and how her own party are going to send her flowers after the traumatic experience, what they are failing to report on are more catastrophic failures by Scottish Government for everyday citizens. Our communities have been gripped in a cost of living crisis now for nearly a year, and we are no further forward. Why is that? Because our governments, both at Westminster and Holyrood, are too busy defending themselves and dealing with their variety projects to actually address what is happening to the people they claim to represent. In Glasgow, for example, we are still trying to deal with the reality of the brutal SNP budget and what that will mean for our citizens. It's all of it. The added cost for the brown bin uplift, the closure and reduced hours of Glasgow City venues, especially the health suites, which are essential for recovery for many people, the charging for entry to our museums, the introduction of the LEZ zone, putting more and more pressure on Glaswegians who are in a financially precarious situation, to name but a few, that makes this cost of living crisis so much worse. Indeed, in our city, in the one of the most deprived areas in the whole of the UK, the Canal Ward, they have discovered that the Ruckhill Community Centre has a roof that is riddled with asbestos. The community had been told that after 3 years of this centre being closed, it would be open in June 2023. Now they are facing an uncertain time and waiting to find out if it is going to be saved with a cost of over £350,000 or if they are going to face demolition. a centre that is essential to the heart of this community. What does that really mean? It means that vital mother and children's groups that operated from the centre have nowhere to go, leaving new mums and their children isolated. It means that senior citizen groups who spent their afternoons in the centre are left on their own with reduced access to socialising and help and support. And it means that addiction groups which met there, which are well needed in our city, are forced to find new homes or disband. All the while, bills and food prices and transport costs are going up. All the while, the SNP are focusing on vanity projects and sending flowers. It's not fair, it's not right, and it's not on. Glasgow and her citizens are suffering for these vanity projects and are plunging further and further into debt. The cost of living crisis is here, and it's now, and it needs to be addressed. Enough is enough now. Glasgow deserves better, says George Redmond, Labour Party councillor in the Carlton ward.
Glasgow Times News on Monday, the 19th of June. 100-mile-an-hour Glasgow driver gets a private hire licence despite conviction. An article written by Drew Sandilands. A driver fined after he was caught exceeding 100 miles an hour, his second speeding conviction, has been handed a private hire licence. Glasgow's licensing committee warned Mohsen Savda over his future behaviour, but they granted a licence, despite an objection from Police Scotland. It will run for a restricted period of 1 year rather than the 3 years requested. A police representative said Mr Safdar had been accused of driving a motor vehicle dangerously and travelling at speed exceeding 100 miles an hour in June last year. He was also alleged to have failed to maintain control of the car and failed to maintain a safe braking distance from another vehicle. Updating the committee, the officer said Mr Safdar was found guilty on June the 6th this year. He was fined £720 and his licence was endorsed with 6 points. The driver now has 9 points on his licence after a previous incident in 2021, where he said he had driven at 60 miles an hour in a 50 mile an hour zone. Mr Safdar told councillors there was no excuse for my actions. He said he had been running late for his work with a rental car firm, which caused me to make a regrettable decision to speed. The applicant said he wanted to become a private hire driver as a secondary form of income, to finance his effort to become a commercial pilot. Councillor Zen Ghani, who chaired the committee, said speeding was very dangerous for both the driver and other road users. Did you not learn anything from your initial speeding conviction? He asked. Mr Safdar said he has now firmly learnt my lesson, given that my job was on the line and my livelihood. Councillor Ghani said it was disappointing the applicant had allowed it to happen a second time. I would have expected you to learn your lesson from that first incident. Asked by Councillor Yunus Jassemi if he had taken steps to control his speeding, the applicant said both instances occurred as a result of me being late for something. He said he has received training on how to manage his diary. Bailey Thomas Kerr said, I'm concerned about this, mainly because it's 2 incidents, one in 2021 and one in 2022. Being a taxi driver would be a very intense job, and there are customers who might be running late. Can you give us assurances that at that point, if there was someone in the back of the car screaming at you to get to this place, that you won't then decide to speed? Mr Safdar said, there's no situation that would ever lead me to speed in the future. It's just not worth it. An article written by Drew Sandilands. Glasgow Times News on Monday, the 19th of June. Cervical Cancer Awareness Week begins. An exclusive article written by Maxine MacArthur. Today marks the beginning of Cervical Cancer Awareness Week around the country. The Glasgow Times has pledged to raise awareness of the disease, which is the most common form of cancer in Scotland for women under 35, and its symptoms as part of its campaign to increase screening test uptake. Don't Fear the Smear is calling on women throughout the city to go along to the vital and potentially life-saving appointment when they're called by the NHS. Working in partnership with the NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, we've also called on both the Health Board and the Scottish Government to tackle lengthy wait times for both initial smear results and follow-up colposcopy appointments, which currently stand at 8 and 52 weeks respectively. This week, Joe's Cervical Cancer Trust has launched a range of events to help women and people with cervixes feel comfortable attending the test. As previously reported by the Glasgow Times, our city's uptake for smear tests is staggeringly low, with uptake at just 64.4% of those eligible for the exam turning up. Currently, the Greater Glasgow area has the lowest turnout of women under 49 in Scotland. The charity is calling for action with clear targets and timelines, alongside speed in innovations such as HPV self-sampling, which could be a step change in efforts to end cervical cancer. In its latest report, the UK's leading cervical cancer charity found that only 17% of health professionals working across cervical cancer prevention think enough is currently being done to eliminate cervical cancer in the UK. Only 20% think enough is being done to ensure high levels of HPV vaccine uptake, and just 16% believe that enough is being done to support cervical screening uptake. HPV vaccination and cervical screening can prevent and one day will help eliminate cervical cancer. It comes as the Scottish Government announced a new cancer strategy designed to lower the number of people diagnosed with the disease at a late stage. As part of the pledge, it also committed to eliminating cervical cancer, which, with a combination of the HPV vaccine and early intervention allowing cells to be caught before they transform into cancer, the charity says is possible. Samantha Dixon, Chief Executive at Joe's Cervical Cancer Trust, said, "A world without cervical cancer doesn't have to be a pipe dream. The UK has the tools to make it a reality, which is incredibly exciting. We need government action to get there as soon as possible, but everyone can play their part. Going for cervical screening when invited and making sure your child is vaccinated against HPV will help make cervical cancer a thing of the past. We must also continue to invest in research, improve access to treatments, and banish the stigma and blame that too often comes with a cervical cancer diagnosis. Being forward-looking should not mean those living with and beyond cancer get left behind." An exclusive article written by Maxine MacArthur. Glasgow Times News on Monday, the 19th of June. Humza Yousaf reveals constitution plan if Scotland gets independence. An article written by Gregor Young. SNP leader and First Minister Humza Yousaf has revealed his party would introduce a written constitution for Scotland if it secures independence. The proposed document, setting out the rights of citizens, would help a newly independent Scotland take on the challenges of the future, Mr Yousaf said. Speaking ahead of the launch of the latest Building a New Scotland prospectus paper detailing the plans, the First Minister said the drafting of a new constitution would enable people in Scotland to shape the new country. He said the constitution would include recognition of the NHS in Scotland, giving people the right to access a system of healthcare free at the point of need. Under the proposal, the document would also provide stronger protections for human rights and equality, including upholding and fulfilling the right to an adequate standard of living, as defined by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It would also formally ban nuclear weapons being stored on the Clyde and guarantee workers the right to take industrial action. This week's prospectus paper will be the fourth paper in the Building a New Scotland series and sets out more details about the Constitution proposal and the arguments to support one. The Scottish Conservatives accused the SNP of focusing on the wrong priorities in the papers, however, while the Scottish Liberal Democrats insisted further devolution was a better option for people longing for change. Mr Yousaf said, Our proposals would provide an opportunity for people in Scotland to shape the newly independent country and create a permanent, modern, written constitution to describe the type of country Scotland would be and how it would be governed. Successive UK governments have taken Scotland in the wrong direction, and with independence we would radically shift where power lies and put it back in the hands of the people who live in Scotland. The Constitution would set out how democracy, rights and equality would be at the heart of everything we do as an independent nation. It will see the introduction of a constitutional right to healthcare available at the point of need, a right to an adequate standard of living as defined by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and protection for workers to take industrial action. And what we will not see under these proposals are nuclear weapons on the Clyde. This proposed constitution would ban nuclear weapons from an independent Scotland. With rights in Scotland under threat as never before because of the actions of the UK government and the Scottish Parliament being undermined, independence has never been more urgent or essential. Donald Cameron, Scottish Conservative, Shadow Cabinet Secretary for the Constitution, External Affairs and Culture, said, "Once again, the SNP is focusing on the wrong priorities at the worst possible time. Humza Yousaf had the opportunity to scrap these self-indulgent independence papers and refocus on what really matters to Scotland. The fact that he's continuing to waste government resources on these unwanted and irrelevant papers just proves that he's determined to continue with Nicola Sturgeon's divisive agenda. Hard-working Scots will be outraged to see their taxpayer funding going toward an imaginary constitution, when the SNP's full focus should be on supporting struggling public services, fixing our NHS and tackling the cost of living crisis. The appalling war in Ukraine has reminded us all that a military deterrent is still a vital part of our national defence. The SNP's plans to write a nuclear weapons ban into the fabric of an independent Scotland shows how dangerously out of touch they really are. Scottish Liberal Democrat leader Alex Cole-Hamilton, MSP, said, "The SNP is completely out of touch. Deploying more civil servants, money and time into independence is an insult to everyone waiting for help in the cost of living crisis, on lifeline ferries or for critical operations and treatments. We need to fix our broken politics and restore integrity, but the SNP is part of the problem and not the solution." Scottish Liberal Democrats would introduce a fair voting system, end the unelected House of Lords and establish foolproof systems to see the Scottish and UK governments working together in all our interests, instead of always hunting for friction and sowing grievance. With the SNP in apparent free fall, there is an opportunity to make devolution work as it should, and Scottish Liberal Democrats will be part of what's next. An article written by Gregor Young. Glasgow Times, on Monday, the 19th of June. Lifestyle. Fans queue up to see Banksy exhibition in the city. An article written by Craig Williams. Banksy fans from near and far queued for hours on Sunday morning outside Glasgow's Gallery of Modern Art to be among the first members of the public to see the elusive artist's major new exhibition. Cut and Run, which has been officially authorised by Banksy, runs at the City Centre Gallery for 3 months until the end of August. Jamie Donaghy and friend Sasha Hampton from Carluke were first in line for walk-in tickets, having arrived at the gallery at 4:30 in the morning. "We're really pleased. We didn't think we'd make it in. We thought there would be sleeping bags and flasks and what have you," Mr. Donaghy told our sister title, The Herald. "This is the first day, so it felt special. Our first chance to attend a public exhibition of his work. It's monumental. It's a big day. With your priorities in life, art has got to be a big one for me, and Banksy is the epitome of what art should be. It's about change, it's about challenge, it's authentic, his priorities are right, he's a great artist." Also in the queue to see the exhibition was Tanya Malott from upstate New York, who's in Glasgow to see Elton John perform at the OVO Hydro. She told the Herald, "I'm a huge fan. I remember the story of him selling his art in Central Park in 2013. It was a huge deal. I've seen his documentary and I love his work. I'll see it twice maybe. If I really like it, I'll come back and see it again. I'm going to Edinburgh, but I've cleared my schedule on Wednesday to come back here for the day. Likewise, Liverpool natives Alan Reid and Natasha Glassock also took advantage of a visit to Glasgow to see Elton John, to take in Banksy's new exhibition. We got up at 7 o'clock this morning to come here, after a late night last night, Mr. Reid said. Miss Glassock added, "It's massive. I imagine Glasgow will get quite busy over the next week or so. I'm looking forward to seeing the stab-proof vest that Stormzy wore, because I was at Glastonbury that year. It's the only thing I know that's in the show." Susan Aitken, leader of Glasgow City Council, was at the gallery to witness punters pour in through the door to see what is Banksy's first solo exhibition in over a decade. She said, "I was lucky enough to get a preview, and I'm really pleased and relieved to be able to genuinely say that I loved it. I was knocked out by it. It makes me more excited knowing what people are going to experience." The fact Banksy chose Glasgow, it's a great compliment to us. He's the most famous artist in the world. He's provocative. He's always challenging. He always makes you think and laugh. I hadn't realised quite how massive this was going to be in terms of the global interest and the fact people are travelling from all over the world to see it. The interest in Banksy is that huge. It's fantastic. And then while they're here, they can experience all that Glasgow has to offer. Come here for Banksy and discover Glasgow. Oban native Sophie Campbell, who lives and works in Glasgow as a textile designer, was also among the first members of the public to see the exhibition on Sunday morning. Speaking to the Herald moments after her visit, she said, "I thought it was so good. It was nice to see the actual stencils. It was nice to see the real thing as well. I think because there's such mystery around him, to see an exhibition you kind of don't know what to expect. It's a bit of a surprise, and everyone loves that level of intrigue. You can't help yourself. There's a lot of thought-provoking stuff. It's not just graffiti. There's a lot of stories, not a narrative. A lot of things nowadays are always down south, and the fact that Banksy opened it here at the Gallery of Modern Art, in front of the statue, it's kind of iconic. You couldn't miss it, not if you were here anyway. I told my family in Oban that they need to come down and see it." An article written by Craig Williams. Glasgow Times News on Monday, the 19th of June. Pair facing jail for torching family business in an utterly idiotic scheme. An article written by Grant McCabe. Two brothers are facing jail after torching the family shop in a failed insurance scam. Sahil and Kazim Ahmed were involved in setting fire to the premises in Glasgow's Gallowgate on May the 16th, 2020, a crime branded utterly idiotic by prosecutors. Jurors heard the International Mobile Phone Centre had been hit financially by the COVID lockdown that year. Porsche driving Sahil, who's 38, and his 34-year-old sibling Kasim denied deliberately starting a blaze in a bid to then claim insurance cash. But Kasim helped get them caught after being captured on CCTV filling a petrol can at a local garage 30 minutes before the fire. The duo were found guilty of a charge of being part of a fraudulent scheme following a trial at the High Court in Glasgow. The business, which sold phones as well as e-cigarettes, had been in the family for around 20 years. Their father was said to have run the shop. However, when he left for Pakistan in 2020, the court heard Kasim took over, with Sahil described as the owner. The plan apparently was for Kasim to hand over £300 per week takings to their mother to help support her. But Sahil of Nitshill in Glasgow told the trial there was a national lockdown in March 2020, so the shop would not have been trading. Things were quite tough, and Kasim had to give my mum the money. Amid the financial struggles, the pair hatched a plan to get their hands on the cash. In her speech to jurors, prosecutor Lindsay DL explained, with little thought of the consequences or attention to detail, they moved items out of the shop into cars, bought petrol, spread it and then lit it. It was not the best executed plan. In fact, it could properly be categorised as utterly idiotic. Miss DL said the motive was simply for money. and CCTV played a crucial role in snaring the Ahmeds. Kasim of the city's Gaubles was filmed filling a fuel can at an Asda petrol station in Glasgow's Parkhead, just a short distance away from the shop. He later claimed it was diesel for another car he had, although he did not know the registration. The pair, along with a third brother, Adoum, who's 28, were all captured at the shop that afternoon. As the blaze took hold, residents who lived above were forced to flee their homes. And a bomb disposal unit was also called out amid fears of explosives in the shop. They were later discovered to be fireworks. Sahel was covered meantime for loss of rental income and also had business insurance. He went on to speak to an employee of Welsh and White insurance brokers to start a claim, although he initially gave the impression he had not been at the shop that day. However, investigators later concluded the blaze was deliberate, with multiple seats of fire in the shop, as well as the presence of petrol. It led to the arrest of the brothers. Sahel gave evidence during the trial. He denied knowing of any plan to deliberately torch the business or that there was anything untoward. Describing being at the shop, he told the trial, "There was a loud bang and then the door came off its hinges." His lawyer, Joseph Barr, asked at one stage, "Did you have any idea what caused what happened?" And he replied, "No." Sahel said he had told Kasim earlier that day that he had to cough up with cash to their mother, but said that he did not have the money. He added, "The mood at the meeting was quite tense. Myself and Adoum were saying, 'You have to pay, you have the shop.'" Adoum Ahmed had also faced the same charge, but jurors returned a not proven verdict. Sahel and Kasim had their bail continued, pending sentencing next month. An article written by Grant McCabe. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 19th of June. Sir Elton John delivers a memorable night at the Hydro. A review written by Stacey Mullen, who unsurprisingly gives it 5 stars. Every so often you know you're going to get a one-off special night at the Hydro, and Sir Elton John could only ever be the man to deliver that. Appearing on the stage for the first of 2 final Glasgow shows with a prompt 7:30 p.m. start for a Saturday night, the 76-year-old took in his adoring fans who got up on their feet to applaud. And quite rightly so. Sir Elton's music is not only impactful, it spans generations, with each fan drawn to different eras of his career. Saturday marked his 320th concert of the Farewell Yellow Brick Road tour and his 27th gig in Glasgow, a feat few have achieved. Despite the intensive touring schedule, Sir Elton still managed an almost 2.5-hour set, which he kicked off with Benny and the Jets. Philadelphia Freedom followed before he dived into "I Guess That's Why They Call It the Blues." He then acknowledged the wait some fans have had to endure to see the show, saying, "Hello Glasgow, I never actually thought on this tour that I would actually get to say that. It's taken so long to get here. Thank you so much for your patience. We're here, and to make up for the time lost, all we can do is a great show for you." And boy, did he deliver on that promise. His voice is still incredible, with an impeccable delivery of the songs he co-wrote with Bernie Taupin. Rocket Man was a moment to remember, while Candle in the Wind was packed with emotion as images of the icon Marilyn Monroe adorned the screen. Watching Sir Elton play the piano is entertainment alone. His musicianship is extraordinary, just like the talented musicians who accompany him. "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me" and "I'm Still Standing" ramped up the atmosphere even more, with the crowd truly grateful to have a musical genius grace them with his presence. That masterclass continued as Crocodile Rock allowed the crowd to provide the "la la la la" backing vocals. His encouragement of emerging artists is legendary in the business, and perhaps this is why he featured the Dua Lipa Cold Heart collaboration rather than the original version Sacrifice. Finishing off on a high with Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, he grinned from ear to ear as a mechanical lift swooped him off the stage, leaving the crowd with the smug knowledge that they had got to see Sir Elton just one last time. A review written by Stacey Mullen.
From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 20th of June 2023, from the news section, call for people with sight loss to be remembered in active travel plan. Report by Catherine Hunter. Calls to ensure that people with sight loss are remembered as the City Council continues its plans to encourage active travel have been made by a Glasgow councillor. The latest proposals to encourage people to rely less on private cars while prompting the Glasgow transport and active travel strategies are part of the Council's plans to achieve its net zero carbon emissions and a minimum reduction of 30% in car kilometres travelled by 2030. When they were outlined to members of the City Administration Committee last Thursday, however, concerns were raised on behalf of the visually impaired over what consultation had taken place to ensure no one is at a disadvantage when it comes to rolling out travel routes. Councillor Saki Ahmed said, "As far as I can see, there are no organisations representing those with a disability, specifically those with visual impairment. Can I ask what steps did the Council take to try and engage with those groups in the development of this strategy? Given that those with a disability face very different challenges to switching to active travel and adapting to changes brought about by more active travel. How do we know what kind of issues people are facing when they are travelling to the city centre and other parts of Glasgow where there is active travel?" Councillor Angus Miller, Convener of Transport and Climate, said that disability groups had been included in the Council's consultation process and that the local authority would continue to engage with them. Councillor Miller said, "Obviously, disability groups have been included in dialogue throughout the development of the overarching travel strategy, of which this is a very close partner. The Council and the various teams within NRS will engage on an ongoing basis with a variety of disability groups, and we have discussed at committee recently how the Council engages with some of those different stakeholders as part of the Accessible Inclusive Design Forum. The overarching active travel strategy also involved considerable engagement from different disability groups." Following the meeting, the convener said the behaviour change strategy would play a key role in unlocking a new era for active travel in Glasgow. He added, "Our travel habits are central to Glasgow's health and well-being and the economy and can also help us deliver our climate action. The new strategy will help ensure we gain the greatest return on our investments in physical infrastructure and service improvements. The strategy addresses the barriers to travelling more sustainably and will help make our streets feel safer for walking, wheeling and cycling. Encouraging people to break their reliance on private car travel is a significant challenge. Local residents will be at the heart of the work to transform travel behaviour, and we want to empower people to make positive changes to how they get about in Glasgow." And that article was written by Catherine Hunter. From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 20th of June 2023, from the news section, Hamilton window cleaner tried to rape 74-year-old woman, jailed. Report by Grant McCabe. A window cleaner snared by his elderly victim's family after he tried to rape her has been jailed for 4.5 years. James McArdle preyed on the 74-year-old woman who tried to fend him off despite being affected by Alzheimer's disease. The 64-year-old then scoffed a sweet before fleeing the scene of the crime in Hamilton in January 2022. The victim's son later checked footage from a security camera fitted to keep tabs on his mum due to her frail condition. He was left sickened after watching back the ordeal McArdle had put the OAP through. Dad of 3 McArdle was soon arrested, but claimed he had been having a laugh with the woman. He was on Tuesday sentenced by Judge Lady Stacey in the High Court in Glasgow. McArdle, also of Hamilton, had pleaded guilty in April to the sexual assault and attempted rape of the pensioner. The court previously heard how the victim lived alone but had regular carers. McArdle had been her window cleaner for around 20 years. Prosecutor Lorraine Clancy KC told how the attack was caught in its entirety by an internal ring security camera installed by the OAP's son. Around 10 a.m. on January the 4th, 2022, McArdle attended at her home to do his fortnightly clean. The pair initially chatted about the recent festive period. McArdle then asked if the victim's carers were due that day. He told her, "You are some woman. Here, did you miss me?" As the woman complained about her slippers being wet from standing outside, McArdle started molesting the pensioner. She lashed out at him, but he continued to pull and prod at her. McArdle stated, "You are some lass, so you are." While the victim then watched television, the pervert moved in again. Miss Clancy said she used a combination of swatting McArdle's hand with her slipper and using her other hand to push away his sexual advances. It is very clear she does not want to engage with McArdle. Sleazy McArdle was undeterred. He started rubbing her back, touched her inappropriately, cuddled and kissed her. He said, "That is why I expletive deleted fancy you." As he carried on, the woman hit him again with her slipper. The prosecutor, her tone changed in that she does not want to do what he is asking her to do. He continues to be persuasive. She maintains her no engagement as she hits him 3 times consecutively with her slipper, sternly saying, "No, no, no." He is unfazed by her rejection. The OAP called him disgusting, adding, "Behave yourself for God's sake." But the hearing was told McArdle went on to attempt to rape the woman. Miss Clancy, she repeatedly asked him to go away and stop these actions. McArdle eventually stopped before deciding to leave, taking a chocolate as he left. The court heard around 10:45 a.m. the victim's son logged onto the camera app on his phone to check on the welfare of his mum. Miss Clancy, at this time, he observed that McArdle had been in the house and he appeared to be making unwanted sexual advances towards his mother. He contacted his sister and informed her what was happening. She contacted police. The son immediately handed over his phone with incriminating footage. McArdle was traced that day and arrested. He told police, "The old woman mentioned something about her leg. I thought we were having a laugh between each other. I do not want to say anything else." McArdle was also put on the sex offenders list for an indefinite period. And that report was by Grant McCabe. From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 20th of June 2023. From the lifestyle section, Galaxy of Stars. Famous Glasgow hotel marks 140th anniversary. Article by Anne Fotheringham. It has survived 2 world wars, seen 7 British monarchs, and welcomed hundreds of the world's most famous people through its doors. Glasgow's Voco Grand Central Hotel, now operated by IHG, celebrates its 140th anniversary this month, and its owners have a variety of glittering events planned, including a special overnight package and the chance to win it for free by sharing your memories of the hotel. Ahead of the official anniversary on June 27th, a new menu has also been launched in the hotel's restaurant and cocktail bar, Champagne Central. The classic cocktails featured, harking back to the hotel's history, include a Cosmopolitan, a Penicillin, and a Basil Gimlet. The Voco Glasgow Central team, together with their charity partners Cash for Kids, will round off the celebrations with a magnificent charity gala ball on Friday, June the 23rd. A galaxy of stars has stayed in the hotel for over the decades, from Hollywood A-listers like Gene Kelly and Frank Sinatra, to John F. Kennedy, the Beatles and Laurel and Hardy. Mafalda Albuquerque, acting general manager, said, "It is truly humbling to be the custodian of the Grand Central Hotel at such a salient moment in its history. Having played such a rich and exciting role in the city of Glasgow, there is so much more to Grand Central than just being a hotel. For many, it is the scene of countless tales, often passed down through generations. These anecdotes are the inspiration behind our 140th anniversary campaign, which aims to share some of the many stories that took place in and around our hotel over the past century." Grace Riley, regional charity manager at Cash for Kids, said, We are delighted to be the beneficiary of the Grand Central Hotel celebrating their 140th anniversary. We have worked in partnership with the team to build up to their event on June the 23rd, and we're honoured to celebrate this momentous anniversary. The funds raised on the night will allow Cash for Kids to support local disadvantaged children and young people during the summer holidays. And that report was by Anne Fotheringham.
This is from the Glasgow Times on the 21st of June 2023, from the news section, and the headline reads, "Very scary, Glasgow dad's terror during attack in Ukraine." This article was by Anne Fotheringham. A Glasgow dad is told how he hid under a stairwell at his apartment block during Russian attacks on Ukraine. Diplomat Keith Allen, who is from Mount Vernon, was working at the British Embassy in Kiev when it was temporarily evacuated as Putin's tanks rolled into the country last February. He said, "When I was first asked to go to Kiev, my wife was pretty worried and said, 'Isn't everyone leaving there?' My last trip out to Kiev, there were sustained attacks every night with air raids, which is frightening and tiring for everyone concerned. Usually it's at night, so I'm in my apartment and have to find a spot under a stairwell until it passes after an hour or two. Luckily, I've not had any missiles or drones land near me, but when you're travelling in and out, you see the damage and devastation caused by Russia's barbaric military bombardment. It's so shocking to see destroyed apartment blocks or shopping malls and listen to the heartbreaking stories of residents suffering the human cost of this illegal war on Ukraine." He added, "As a dad, it's really difficult to hear of children disappearing and other atrocities being carried out on innocent civilians." The UK government is today, June 21st, holding the Ukraine Recovery Conference in London. More than 1,000 foreign dignitaries from 61 states, NGO representatives, and hundreds of business leaders and entrepreneurs are expected to attend, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will participate virtually. The UK has committed £2.3 billion in military support to Ukraine in 2022, more than any country other than the United States, and it has spent £220 million in humanitarian assistance, including £2 million to support Scottish NGO the Halo Trust. Keith also helped establish the British Embassy in Kabul after the 9/11 attacks, as he was previously the UK's High Commissioner to Mauritius. He said, "Friends who were always winding me up about my cushy job in Mauritius aren't giving me any stick now. I think the gravity of the situation in Ukraine is abundantly clear to everyone. I served as High Commissioner to Mauritius for 4 years and I never got much sympathy if I moaned about having a tough day." He added, "You couldn't get a more dramatic contrast than working in Kiev when Ukraine is under attack. One of the scariest moments," says Keith, "was when Iranian drones arrived. We hadn't seen anything like that before, and it was very scary when you could see and hear these things flying overhead," he said. Keith is just about to take up a new role as Deputy Ambassador to the Netherlands. "It will be busy, but my family will be happier that I'm not in danger," he said. "When I re-established the UK Embassy in Kabul in 2002, shortly after we'd gone into Afghanistan following 9/11, there was no hot water and we were sleeping in camp beds in the corridor in the middle of winter. Being in Ukraine over winter with relentless Russian attacks leading to power outages and loss of heating was also really tough. Not every posting could be to Mauritius." He added, "I'll never forget the resilience and bravery of the Ukrainian people and my colleagues, and look forward to celebrating with them when Ukraine secures victory." This article was by Anne Fotheringham. This is from the Glasgow Times on the 21st of June 2023, from the news section, and the headline reads, "Arnold Clark among companies named for not paying minimum wage." This article is by Nicole Mitchell. Several Scottish businesses, from car dealerships to airlines, have been named for failing to pay minimum wage to their lowest paid workers. A list of more than 200 employers across the UK have been named by the government today for failing to pay their workers a total of almost £5 million in a clear breach of national minimum wage NMW law, leaving around 63,000 workers out of pocket. Scottish companies being named today range from regional airlines to sole traders, and a clear message from the government that no employer is exempt from paying their workers the statutory minimum wage. Businesses named include Logan Air Limited, Arnold Clark Automobiles Limited, OMI Facilities Limited, OMI Management Limited, and Portal Security Limited. The workers were underpaid, either by employers deducting pay from their workers' wages, employers failing to pay workers correctly for their working time, or employers paying the incorrect apprenticeship rate, and not all instances of underpayment were intentional. All the companies listed have since paid back what they owe to their staff and have also faced financial penalties. The investigations by the HMRC concluded between 2017 and 2019. Kevin Hollenrake, Minister for Enterprise, Markets and Small Business, said, "Paying the legal minimum wage is non-negotiable, and all businesses, whatever their size, should know better than to shortchange hard-working staff. Most businesses do the right thing and look after their employees, but we're sending a clear message to the minority who ignore the law. Pay your staff properly or you'll face the consequences." Malcolm Offord, UK Government Minister for Scotland, said, "The minimum wage is an important guarantee for workers, and this government is upholding that standard by calling out businesses, regardless of their size, who failed to pay up. We will not see people shortchanged for their hard work. By naming the firms, we are underlining the fact that paying the national minimum wage is not optional, it is a legal requirement." Brian Sanderson, Chair of the Low Pay Commission, said, "The minimum wage acts as a guarantee to ensure all workers, without exception, receive a decent minimum standard of pay. Where employers break the law, they not only do a disservice to their staff, but also undermine fair competition between businesses. Regular naming rounds should be a useful tool in raising awareness of underpayment and helping to protect minimum wage workers." A spokesperson for Logan Air explained that an optional salary sacrifice programme, which operated more than 4 years ago, was the reason they were included in this list. The spokesperson said Logan Air's inclusion in this list relates exclusively to an optional salary sacrifice programme operated more than 4 years ago, which enabled employees to voluntarily increase their pension contributions or to purchase electric vehicles. In providing its employees with options as to how to spend their own income, the choices made by a small number of staff led to their take-home pay falling below the NMW at the time. This issue was rectified by Logan Air and closed by HMRC in 2019. The Department for Business and Trade, which administers the National Minimum Wage Scheme, fully accepts this issue was raised and resolved more than 4 years ago, so it is with great disappointment to see our inclusion in today's list so long after the event. This article is by Nicole Mitchell. This is from the Glasgow Times on the 21st of June 2023, from the news section, and the headline reads, "Former teacher jailed for sexually abusing boys in Glasgow and Paisley." This article is by Rosie Lewis. A former teacher and football coach has been jailed for sexually abusing young boys. Kenneth Divers was surrendered from Vietnam to stand trial at Paisley Sheriff Court last month. The 78-year-old was found guilty of abusing the boys, some as young as 11, at various locations, including Hampton Park and 2 schools in Paisley between 1968 and 1992. Today, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison and placed on the sex offenders register indefinitely. Speaking after the sentencing, Katie Stewart, who leads on an international cooperation for the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service, COPFS, said Kenneth Divers' crimes had a devastating impact on the lives of his victims, and I commend them for their courage and composure throughout the prosecution process. This prosecution would not have been possible without them, and the complex international multi-agency work needed to bring Divers back to Scotland. The positive relationships we have built with international partners are vitally important to delivering justice for the people of Scotland. This case shows that no matter the passage of time or where a perpetrator heads, we and our partners are committed to the effective and fair administration of justice, holding people like Divers to account. Following allegations of historical sexual abuse, Police Scotland established that divers had left Scotland in 2013 to move to Dubai. A further police investigation found that divers had subsequently settled in Vietnam. In September 2021, an Interpol Red Notice was issued and shared with Vietnam. Weeks later, the National Crime Agency, the NCA, confirmed that Vietnamese authorities had located divers living in Hoi An. A full extradition request was sent through diplomatic channels to Vietnam, requesting that divers be returned to Scotland for the purpose of prosecution. A complex multi-agency operation involving COPFS prosecutors, Police Scotland, NCA International liaison officers based in Vietnam, the Home Office, the Vietnamese Ministry of Public Security and other international partners led to divers' arrest by Vietnamese authorities in January 2022. This article is by Rosie Lewis.
That concludes this week's edition of the Glasgow Times podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Q and Review and to tell your friends about our service.